On today's show, The Incredibles 2 shatters box office records, Captain Marvel breaks a glass ceiling, and we have Aquaman. Hell yeah. Movie Talk starts right now.
He looks good wet.
Weird getting excited about Aquaman, but I am.
I like him wet.
I don't know
I'm glad you're saying that, not me.
I'm just saying.
If I had to pick one person on the panel to say they like Aquaman wet, it would be John Steven Rocha. He joins us today, as does Perri Nemiroff. I am merely Mark Ellis. Whole lot of fun movie stories to get to, and then we'll be taking your live Skype call. I'm told we're not doing Skype calls today, but I can remind you guys that this show today is brought to you by Rode Microphones. Head to myrodereel.com right now. They have a very cool contest for all you filmmakers out there that's running through July 31st. All you got to do is you make a 3-minute short, and then you also make a behind-the-scenes vid that is showing you using some sort of Rode product. If you do so, you are in the running to earn part of $1 million in prizes. You just go to enter at myrodereel.com and do so by July 31st. So get out there, start making art, maybe make a little scratch, do yourself and your family proud. Okay, we kick off with our top story today, which is the box office, and boy, was it a box office weekend. The Incredibles 2, you started hearing word of mouth, you started hearing critical praise, fans really enjoyed it, but I don't think anybody could have predicted that it could do $180 million domestically in its opening weekend. That shatters the all-time animated opening. It's a huge opening for a sequel. It's in the top 10 of all-time openings here in the States. I think it's number 8 right now, $180 million, and that surpasses the all-time record for a PG movie. Yeah, everything else is PG-13. The all-time record was Beauty and the Beast, the movie that I thought could make it to $200 million. Rocha, you like to make fantastical box office predictions. Did you think The Incredibles 2 could get to $180 million?
Yes. In fact, Riley and I did a news piece about this when the early box office tracking, I think a week or two ago, and we both thought 150 to 200, settling around 175. So I wasn't surprised when I read this. Now, listen, this is the advantage of having 75 friends. When the buzz is building amongst your 75 friends, you can gauge that. That's like a test for you to go, okay, this movie's going to explode. And people were going insane in my group of friends waiting for this thing to come out. And the trailers, everything about it was so positive. And I thought because other films didn't perform so well recently, I thought this film certainly had an opening to get to that spot. So I'm not surprised because all year we've been blowing the doors off box office records, and so this one made a lot of sense because of all the hype and buzz ahead of it. Also, it's 14 years later. These people who went to see the first one, they're parents now, so they have their kids they want to pass this on to and everything like that. So to me, when I saw 180, I was like, yeah, makes sense. I really was not shocked or blown away or anything like that because this is what's been happening all year. People want to go to the movies for a good movie because they want to escape what we just heard, all the stuff that's happening.
Oh no, I called the fire truck for your scorching hot take.
Well, because everything is happening around in the world, people want to go and enjoy and have fun and sit back and relax. And Brad Bird has made an incredible film. I've seen it twice now. I will definitely go back at least 2 or 3 more times to enjoy this film. And so it deserves all the box office it made this weekend.
Well, I don't have 75 friends. I have one friend, and she is a dog. So I didn't really get a good vibe as to what Incredibles 2 could do. Perri, I think that the 14-year gap could have hurt this movie just as well as it helped it. Do you agree with Rocha that this was a generational thing at this point? Because people who were kids or were teenagers when the first one came out now wanted to take their young ones to see the new one.
I think that's part of it. I think basically in the case of Incredibles, so many stars just aligned because when the original projections came out, it was something like a range of 135 to 150. And I veered towards the higher end of that thinking, yeah, it was going to smash records, but the amount it made is a lot. It really did just completely blow past projections. And I think it's a lot of things. I do think the 14-year gap was a big deal because I don't think this was a case where many just forgot about Incredibles until it returned. I think that was something that was a highly rewatchable movie that people who loved it continued to share with their families. So buzz just kept building and building and building. Then we have the Disney Pixar brand. I think that marketing department did an excellent job promoting that movie. I think Father's Day might have helped. And then on top of that, something you brought up, Rocha, I think this was just prime time, not necessarily for a big blockbuster, but specifically for a family-friendly animated film. I think the last animated movie that we got on wide release was Sherlock Gnomes. And what did that come out in March? Yeah. And then not only that, but looking forward for how much money this could make, this is in pretty good shape because I don't think the next big animated wide release competition is until Hotel Transylvania 3. So not only could we be looking at Incredibles scoring all these incredible box office records right now, but in the long run, the grand total might achieve similar feats.
Sherlock Gnome's doing $10.6 million worth of business in its opening weekend. Hotel Transylvania, I think, will do very well. Animated movies that have some sort of buzz around them, or at least a built-in product, like with The Incredibles and Pixar, too. I don't know that Toy Story 4 could match this, though. The Toy Story 3, when that came out, was about $110 million. Then Finding Dory broke that record, $135 million. And then before they come take me away in the paddy wagon, I'm going to say this. I think that $180 million is the biggest opening weekend you're going to see for the rest of the year. I don't think that there's a movie that's coming out between now and Christmas that is going to top 180 domestic, which is weird to say because this weekend we have the Little Dinosaur movie coming out. The first iteration of the new version of Jurassic World came out and did over $200 million worth of box office, but I don't see Fallen Kingdom getting anywhere near $180 million.
I'm with you on this. As much as I want to see Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom do well, because I love that franchise, I think right now I'm kind of in the ballpark of like the 130, 140 range for that one. And when I started to think about all the movies coming out later this year, I actually don't think anyone has a chance of topping this opening weekend. And what kind of set that in stone for me is the fact that this movie, Incredibles, topped Beauty and the Beast of all films, which was like an epic box office juggernaut. And the fact that it topped that makes me think that even though we have things like Aquaman, Bumblebee, Fantastic Beasts,
The Meg.
that of course as well, which apparently is going to be like a $200 million movie or something.
It's going to be huge.
But when you consider all that and you start to look at the trends within those franchises, I don't think they have a shot at beating this.
Rocha, are you as staunch in your belief as Perry?
No, I disagree vehemently. I think vehemently. No, I think this is the deal. And also, one last thing about Incredibles. If I read this correctly, New York Times, adjusted for inflation, it still beats the highest animation opening, which was Shrek the Third, I think, with 157 million. And that's incredible.
Wow,
so
okay.
all around, it's incredible. But I will say this. I do think Aquaman has a legitimate shot to cross the 180 million. And I'll tell you this, because DC fans are desperate for a good DCU film. The images that came out, which we're going to talk about later, got people excited. If that first trailer comes out and knocks it out of the park, then comic books, because this is the people that went to see Incredibles 2 as well, are superhero fans. And that matters. That's a huge part of the people who went to see this film. I think they're going to go over and see Aquaman if it gets all this incredible buzz, because DC fans will come. They will patronize a film over and over and over again. If for nothing else, to prove a point that they are still a powerful market, I think they'll go. And then if it's a good film, superhero fans in general will go and see this thing. Now, I don't know how to gauge Jurassic World. I've been crazy in my predictions, but kind of right most of the year. I'm nowhere near Perri Nemiroff, but I do okay. But with Jurassic World, I can't figure this film out because A, I wasn't a big fan of it. It's not for me. That doesn't mean it's not a good film. It's just not for me. But overseas, it's opened up really well in some markets, like the highest grossing Universal Pictures film ever in those markets. So that trend may carry over and people may want to go and see this thing to 150, 175. I don't know. It's certainly possible, but I can't gauge. That's the one film I can't gauge the interest in domestically. But I think Aquaman is the only film logistically that has a shot. And yeah, I know, not Bumblebee, but certainly Aquaman.
I can't tell if you really believe that or if you're just trying to create a segue to our next story or something.
No, I'm not. I'm serious. I really do think that because of what happened with
I think
Wonder
the
Woman,
most valid point you made was the fact that people will return, but still the returns doesn't help Aquaman top Incredibles opening weekend.
It could if people go multiple times the same weekend. That has happened on numerous superhero
That
films.
I think is a stretch. I think if the movie is good, we could see a situation where it's something like Wonder Woman, where it does really, really well opening weekend, not Incredibles numbers, but then long term it does have long legs, which I think is sometimes even more beneficial than a movie coming out of the gate super hot. Because how many times have we seen a movie just crush it opening weekend and then you see it plummet?
Look, I'm not saying that you're flying over the cuckoo's nest, okay? I'm saying that you're in there. You're in the ward, okay? You're getting pills from Nurse Ratched, but it's not as crazy as what I initially thought. We talked about it in our pre-production meeting because Batman v Superman made $166 million. That also had Batman and Superman in it, okay? This isn't, and they were fighting each other. We're like, what the hell's going on? And a lot of people want to see that movie. Suicide Squad, $133 million. That's nothing to sneeze at. So Aquaman, I just don't know that the character of Aquaman, it's just not one of the main characters. People are excited about this movie. I am thrilled to see this movie now, especially with the images we're about to talk about. Yeah. I just don't see it getting to $180 million. It's not a critique of the movie. I think the movie could still be great. If it breaks $100 million, I think DC would be very happy with that.
There's that, and you bring up the BVS example. BVS owned its opening weekend. Aquaman has so much competition. So even though I think if the movie is good, it has a shot of doing well, it's still, there's only so much of the box office pie to go around.
What competition you talk about in December besides what's coming out on the same weekend?
Mary Poppins is coming back.
Well,
it's a bunch of Oscar fare.
No, it's not. Mary Poppins is after. There's Bumblebee. There's Battle Angel Alita. There's Mortal Engines. These are all big blockbuster fare that are going to try to make a serious amount of money in December, and I think they're all going to eat into each other.
No one's going to see Mortal Engines. I'll tell you that right now. And the second thing is, what's the other one that you mentioned? Oh, Mary Poppins. That has a shot because of the family angle, absolutely, to do well. I just think people this is the first film from the quote-unquote new regime, Hamada, James Wan. I can't believe you're not supporting your boy James Wan to do $200 million. But this is the thing that with this,
box office predictions doesn't mean I'm not supporting the filmmaker. I'm rooting for it.
I'm just saying, I think it certainly has a possibility. And yes, you bring up Batman for Superman, but that also got bad word of mouth, which killed it on the latter end of that weekend. And I think with Aquaman, if it gets great word of mouth, it certainly has a shot. And I was right about Black Panther, Infinity War, and Incredible. So I can go crazy, but sometimes I'm right. So I may be in the ward, but I have my own room. I'm not like,
I'm not in the roommate.
Exactly. I'm not hanging out in the main area playing checkers with the other crazy people. I'm chilling in my own room, kind of okay and maybe somewhat sane.
Well, a movie that got okay buzz was Ocean's 8 that did just under $20 million in its second weekend here in the States. And Tag, a movie that I didn't really hear any buzz for, didn't even get a press screening for Tag. I wanted to see Tag. I like the trailer. I guess the studio didn't really believe it and just kind of came out. Still made $14 million, which was actually higher than most analysts had predicted. Solo and Deadpool 2 rounding out the top five. Deadpool 2 is just a shade under $300 million. Solo still not gotten to even $200 million domestically. Now let's talk about those Aquaman picks that Rocha was so excited to get to. The movie comes out, like we said, in Christmas, around Christmas time in December. And James Wan's movie had some images premiere in Entertainment Weekly the last couple days, and they look really, really good. And for an Entertainment Weekly, because Entertainment Weekly, it's a very popular magazine. I like it a lot. When they have the first images, sometimes they don't always look even finished. These look ready to go. James Wan directing Jason Momoa and company. I like seeing him and Orm have kind of like a tete-a-tete meeting. This movie has right now the inklings of what Rocha was talking about. Not a $200 million opening weekend, but something that's going to get the DCEU and the fans reinvigorated, and maybe this is the movie that we can all get behind and not tear each other to shreds online. Do you see it going that way, Perri?
That is a statement I could really get behind. I really do deep down believe that James Wan might have pulled this off. Seeing these images got me so much more pumped than I was before. And, when we covered these on our news video, we were talking about just my concerns regarding the underwater environment and just melding the practical effects with the digital effects. And, I don't have anything against VFX. A lot of viewers out there took that to an extreme. I'm in awe of what some are able to create, but just in terms of my creative sensibilities, I do tend to just veer towards the practical, and I have an easier time getting sucked into a movie with great practical effects. In this case, I think the set of images that they chose to release were just spot on, with the first ones coming out that showed all of the flesh and blood characters, the idea of the Black Manta helmet, the helmet sitting there on the desk, and then after that slowly came other ones where it showed you how he was going to integrate the digital elements. And again, my favorite image in that whole batch, still to this moment, is that behind the scenes image with James Wan standing there on a set that looks like it could just be in the movie as is. That to me looks like a major stepping stone to creating the perfect balance between digital and practical, which is what I am rooting so much for in this movie.
Yeah, Rocha, I mean, I think one of the things that really stuck with me is that James Wan is talking about how this movie feels so different. It's a water world, it's its own place, that he felt like he wasn't even making a movie that was for a particular comic book or to factor into this larger world. He got to really go off and just make his own sci-fi fantasy. That sounds a lot more like Wonder Woman than it does Batman v Superman.
Absolutely, and that's what gets me excited about it. Look, these images look badass and epic, and that's what I want to see from a superhero film. And if you're going to veer away from the standard Aquaman thing with the blonde hair and the green and the orange or yellow, whatever you want to say, then this is the way you go. You make it this powerful, you cast this way, you have these images that convey a larger world, a more grand world, because the ocean is 70 to 75% of the Earth's surface, so therefore it's got to have a large expanse and a huge thing to function in. And I like the shot of the ruins. I love the shot of the Seven Kings. That's awesome. And the shots of Nicole Kidman as Atlanta is fantastic. Well, and King Orm, look, that shot could be cheesy as hell with their man buns, but it looks badass. And you get the stuff in the background and their tridents. That's going to be, so you know a battle is coming. So it's going to hit, it's going to check all the boxes, and people have been clamoring for a trailer, but I'm glad we've waited for a trailer, because get the effects right, make it look fantastic. We saw like a minute and a half, I think, at Comic-Con last year. So take your time, James Wan, release that trailer when you're ready, because we all want to be excited about this. And a lot of people talked about coming out of Justice League how much they enjoyed Momoa as Aquaman. And of course, I've read a number of articles from women who've commented about how hot he is. So that's going to factor into people going to see this as well. You got to throw it all in there. So I think it's all going to work out in a good way. And I think Momoa is perfect for this. And in the long run, maybe even 200 million. Who knows? Who knows? But I'm saying I really just enjoy these images, and they got me excited because, you know, when you're worried about this and you hear, and people saw preview screenings of this the last couple of weeks, a lot of positive,
Aquaman?
Of Aquaman. A lot of positive
who do you
buzz.
know? Which of your 75 friends has seen Aquaman?
Well, 5 of them. No. So that's the thing that's possible here. I'm not going to name names, but that's the thing that's possible here. Just 5 of them, that's all. But like, that's the thing that excites me about it, in all of it. And also, the thing is that he just looks perfect as it. And if they're going to go this route, I think Juan has done a really great job in this. And that's what excites me the most, because you get the family aspect, the epic of it, and the romance of it as well.
One of the other details that was brought up in these articles that I really took to was Orm's agenda and what's driving him this whole movie. Because, you know, how many times have we seen superhero movies where, you know, someone is hell-bent on world domination or some sort of lofty idea that as a human being you can't really relate to? So him being pissed that the people above the ocean surface are polluting his oceans, that right there is just, I mean, no matter what he looks like underwater with any kind of digital effects that I mentioned, that right there humanizes him more so than, you know, maybe a specific villain that popped up in Justice League.
Plus the fact that he's, Aquaman is half human, half Atlantean. So how's that going to factor in? So that's going to be a lot of conversations about that.
Aquaman is living on land at that point too, which adds like a whole nother layer to that complication between the two.
It's like Black Panther, right? You had Michael B. Jordan coming, who's half Wakandan, coming in to try to take over Wakanda, whereas the natural-born Wakanda King T'Challa is fighting him. So there's elements of it that can relate here.
So he's half human, half Atlantean?
Yeah.
All right. I didn't, I guess I forgot that. That
his dad's
must have been a good weekend for whoever that human was. That's exciting.
He's a lighthouse keeper. If they're going with Tom Curry, so he's a lighthouse keeper.
So Aquaman comes out around Christmas. Then you have a superhero movie called Venom that comes out in September. The next superhero movie on the docket, with all apologies to Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard helping dinosaurs, is Ant-Man and the Wasp. That movie comes out 4th of July weekend. I believe July 6th is the official date. They start screening the movie for critics and whatnot even this weekend. Perri Nemiroff had a chance to go to the set of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and you just had a big thing drop on Collider.com where you can talk about it as of this morning, and you informed me about that at 8:45, and so I said, well, after it's 9 o'clock, would you like to talk about it on Movie Talk? So you got to be on the set. You got to see some of the inner workings of how it's going. What was your big takeaway?
I think one of my biggest takeaways, because, we could discuss quotes and information about the movie all day long, but the one thing that makes being on a set physically yourself different is just standing on a set that ultimately you'll see in the movie. And right before, I was showing Rocha the picture that we're allowed to share that we all took on set, and it's of me standing next to small Hank Pym's lab while actually being on set, standing inside the actual Hank Pym lab. And there's just no feeling that could match walking onto a soundstage and standing in a fully realized 3-story building, especially a lab like Hank Pym's, because one of the coolest things that the production designer on that movie got to do is that, you can't have someone like Hank Pym build a flashy, gigantic facility like the new Avengers facility. This building is so tied to his technology and his sensibilities where when you watch the movie, look around that set. There are so many teeny tiny things that we see in our everyday life that he used to build that lab small, and then he enlarges it, and you see the infrastructure of the building being held together by pieces of an erector set. That was just the most mind-blowing thing. But if you're into it for all the little story details and everything, we have so much content both on Collider Video and Collider.com today. 7 things to know from my set visit, just 7 interesting facts about the story, the characters, all that stuff is up. We also have what I learned about the quantum realm and how that's going to come into play, and then also exactly where Ant-Man and the Wasp fits into the MCU timeline, which to me winds up enriching this story even more in terms of how it is jumping off from the events of Captain America Civil War.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you is, do you see this movie more as just like a fun kind of palate cleanser from Infinity War? Do you see it tying into future MCU movies?
So the interesting thing about this set visit is it took place in September before I had seen Infinity War.
September? That was like 38 months ago.
We all knew that Infinity War was coming, but obviously nobody knew exactly what was going to happen. So it would have been interesting to redo all these interviews with that in mind. But the cool thing about it jumping off from Civil War is the fact that the events of Civil War not only changed the game for Scott with his experience working with the Avengers and now wanting to step away from that and actually be a father and, kind of go legit here, but it also affects Hope and Hank too, because the Sokovia Accords, the stuff that they have now is not legal. So they're on the run. So the events of that movie completely influence the jumping off point of Ant-Man and the Wasp, but Peyton Reed was telling us then it becomes its own thing. But then I bring in Infinity War, and obviously I'm reading into the quotes that we heard as I'm transcribing them. I'm reading into them in a completely different way now. And I'm, specifically when it comes to the quantum realm, I'm just hanging on to every single word, trying to figure out how that technology could then influence the events of the end of Infinity War.
It's our own Natasha Romanoff, the spy behind enemy lines. Perri Nemiroff. Rocha, you hear all this stuff. Does this get you more jacked for Ant-Man and the Wasp? Are you already at a fever pitch?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, look, one of my jobs sometimes is to watch things that Perri does or read some of the scripts she writes, and it's a fortunate thing that I get to do because I get to see it before you guys do, and all I can tell you is they're worth watching and they get you all excited for the film, and it's a good breakdown of things you might need to know and things you get a little inside peek on that you have before you walk into the theater. So I'm super excited. Yeah.
All right. Well, Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out in a couple weeks, and then the next MCU film is going to be Captain Marvel. That comes out in 2019, March of that year, and this is going to be the first film that has a female composer doing the score. Pinar Toprak is the first woman to write and score a movie for Marvel. It's a fresh talent that has worked on a number of small-scale thrillers and horror movies before breaking out in a big way last year as the composer for sci-fi's Superman prequel series Krypton. And if you're a video game fan, you probably heard of the game Fortnite. She did the music for that as well. So I think that proves that she's got some, she might be younger in this industry, but she clearly has a lot of ability. If you're scoring stuff like Fortnite, you're trusted to do something like a sci-fi series. This is a huge step forward, and I think that it's very fitting given that the movie is Captain Marvel. Very excited to see what Pinar Toprak can bring to the score. I know that movie scores are a huge part of your enjoyment of a film, Rocha. Yep. So does this elevate your anticipation for Captain Marvel?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I listened to her music because I didn't know about her yet. So when we did the news piece last week, I went back and just listened to a bunch of her stuff this weekend. It's so epic and powerful and fantastic. And I was shocked that she hadn't been scoring larger films by this point because the music just lends itself to it. So obviously Krypton and Fortnite were her calling card, but she's won awards in her past, and she studied a lot of music for a number of years. So she's able, her knowledge of music seems incredibly extensive. So to me, the vibe that she's going to bring to it is brilliant, and she's a woman, and that's important. Captain Marvel is a first female-led Marvel film. You have a half male, half female directors, and then you have a female composing it who earned the right to compose it. She is great with her music. So she's a woman. It checks both boxes, and it makes the most sense to me, and it gets me excited that Marvel is approaching this with the right mentality. So I can't wait to see if she creates a theme that stands out above all the other Marvel themes and could rival Wonder Woman's theme in a comparable thing.
Yeah, and regardless of the subject matter of the movie itself, it just feels like the composing for film has been such a male-dominated industry for such a long time that it is great. It's a breath of fresh air. This is great news. And also, Perri, Marvel's never been shy about switching up composers. I mean, they have a lot of different composers that do various music, even taking over one for the other in individual franchises. So this is not a shock to me that Marvel is looking other places to have people compose their scores, and I think Pinar should be a good fit here.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to hear this news, and this is what I would have expected them to do, because they're clearly placing prime importance on filling this cast and crew with really powerful female voices. And, I'll reference something that I read when I was reading up on the basics, and I read the Collider.com article, because I know a lot of us like to fall back on that idea of whoever is best for the job. And while a big part of me does really believe that, we're in a situation right now where how many Marvel movies have there been? Every single one of them has a male composer. This is a company that can, go the extra mile, maybe broaden their search, find some new names. And who knows, maybe they locked her in that process, and now they have a whole bunch of other people that they didn't know of in their back pocket. So I think sometimes that motivation is very, very necessary, and I can't wait to see what she brings to the MCU.
All right, totally unfair question. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Aquaman, Captain Marvel. Which one has the biggest opening weekend?
Captain
Marvel.
Okay. All right.
Wait. So Captain Marvel's going to make more than Incredibles.
220.
It's going to make $201 million.
220.
220?
Trust me.
All right.
220.
All right. Just take it easy. Let's just all make sure we're still around in 2019.
So you can't introduce this months from now and go, no one thought, I thought. So lock it down now, 220.
All right. I don't know where I'm going to be in 2019, but I know where Apple's going to be, still probably making stuff. And now it looks like they want to go into the world of developing and distributing films. That's right. Animated movies, to be exact. Apple is looking to produce a film through Cartoon Saloon. Cartoon Saloon is an Irish animation studio, and they've made a number of Oscar-contending films over the last decade. The Secret of Kel, Song of the Sea, and The Breadwinner are their three major feature releases. But now that they've made this deal with Apple Inc., according to a report from Bloomberg, it looks like Apple wants to expand their horizons, distribute the movie. We don't know how they want to distribute the movie. We don't know if it's going to get a theatrical release. For the Academy Award consideration, you still have to have your movie come out in theaters at some point. So you would imagine that this movie, whatever it is going to get a theatrical release. There's no director. There's no stars. We don't even have a concept yet. We have no idea what the hell's happening at Apple. All we know is that it's the Apple with a little bite taken out, and they made this computer right here. So, Perri, what else can you read into this story? The fact that Apple wants to get into the animated film distribution game.
The fact that we're hearing this now versus, let's say, whatever Apple could create to compare it to some sort of big, epic, blockbuster type movie, I think that is a sign of what they're planning to do with this platform and their original programming. I think this is the first thing we've heard in the feature film realm, at least. Most of the stuff that I'm aware of is TV, but this is what they have to be doing right now, whether you're talking about aligning with a gigantic name like Oprah Winfrey or this animation studio. You got to start somewhere, and it's starting, especially where it almost feels like with all of these up-and-coming streaming services or, massive companies that are starting in the streaming game, their competition is leaps and bounds ahead of them, so they need to align themselves with established individuals and companies, and that's what Apple seems to be doing right now. And this particular animation company is probably a smart move because they have such a distinct style compared to what we're used to seeing in, let's say Illumination or Pixar. So I think this is a really interesting decision. I think one of the reports I read said that this deal is not finalized, so who knows if it will actually go through and happen. But I'm happy to hear that they're putting the focus on animation.
Yeah, and Rocha, for Cartoon Saloon, it's a company that has proven themselves as storytellers, and now you get this shot in the arm with Apple potentially. Do you see this more as a story as far as what the world of the animation landscape could look like within 5 years, or that Apple is going to be a major player in film overall?
I don't think Apple gets into this situation if they're not going to be a major player. They don't never do anything small. So to me, this is a smart move because you take a company that's established, but not 100% really well known, and you can guide, that you can create, you can take them to the next level, and they can guide you on what they do and what they do really well, telling the stories. I mean, Secret of Kells I enjoyed that animated film. So they certainly have a track record of creating these interesting animated features that are different, that stand out. Apple doesn't want to just be another animation studio. They want to have their own distinct style and brand. So you pick up a company that's not that well known, you can guide its style and brand and its look, and it's smart for Apple to do this way. And I like that this is a good thing because this says there's a lot of content out there for people, or there are a lot of places rather for you to bring your content to, that they'll listen to you, hear you, and possibly get your film done. This is incredible how many streaming services are popping up now, and so it's funny. I remember we had 4 television stations and 3 or 4 studios, and now it's massive all over the place. So if you're a creator, especially if you're an animation person, this can't get you anything but excited that there are this many people who want to do, or companies who want to do animation. I think it's a smart move.
Does it give you any hesitation? Because we always talk about is it Disney or Comcast acquiring Fox, and that you just have there's like going to be 3 companies, that are just like the mortal engines. They're just huge and they just absorb these smaller companies. Well, is that a fear in this particular story, or do you just see it as Apple doing what they need to do to survive themselves?
Rocha's comment just now immediately brought my mind back to the more promising side of that whole thing that we talked about on that last edition of Movie Talk, where we discussed the whole merger thing, where there's a lot of potential pitfalls with massive companies joining forces. But the one silver lining that I keep hanging tight to is this idea of the landscape is completely changing. We're going to have companies like Apple, Amazon, Netflix basically hitting studio level. And in order for the traditional studio to compete with them, they have to merge with other companies in order to stay at that same level. So, when you bring it up with all the rising streaming services, I mean, something about that just kind of gave me more hope for this this inevitable rise of the merger that we're moving towards in Hollywood.
Well, look at Netflix, right? Netflix is doing all this original content. They don't have a Netflix brand. Netflix is the brand, but they don't oh, that's a Netflix movie. Oh, that's totally every artist has their ability to express themselves through that movie, and so Netflix is in there going, no, do this, do this, do this. They seem very hands off, and maybe Apple's going to be that way in terms of steering it, but not necessarily in terms of being on top of the content, making sure it looks a certain way or is a certain thing. So I like that.
Well, with the people,
freedom is important here.
With the people they're aligning themselves with, when you go into the TV realm, those aren't people that you bring on board and say, I'm going to tell you what to do to fit my vision. I mean, we're talking Oprah, we're talking M. Night Shyamalan, Reese Witherspoon. That list goes on, and those are all epic creative forces that are going to make their own thing.
Our last story today comes courtesy of our own Jeff Snyder. Jeff Snyder, big Patriots fan. He actually is on a team called the Patriots, and he breaks his story this morning about Janicza Bravo is now directing the new movie Zola for the company A24. This movie was originally going to be directed by James Franco. Now he's just going to be producing the movie, and it tells a very interesting tale of a stripper that is going across the country. She's going on a road trip to Florida with a prostitute, her bipolar boyfriend, and a moody pimp. It sounds like every road trip I've ever been on. This is exciting stuff. Bravo has directed a number of critically acclaimed television shows, including Atlanta, Dear White People, and Love, as well as HBO's Divorce. And she also did her feature film debut last year with the movie Lemon. So Janicza Bravo stepping into the director's chair, working on a movie like this. What do you all see for Zola?
Oh, I love it because I saw Lemon just by chance last year. It is hilarious and brilliant and moving and poignant and weird and wild and out there, and yet it's a very small story. Her combination of telling a very universal, moving story and yet placing it in an outlandish world, bright with colors, was really incredible. So what she's going to bring to this, I look forward to it. I'm glad Franco's not directing, he's just producing, because I think, Disaster Artist was good, but he was good, but like what she's doing is what an artist does. And she's, an accomplished costume designer, editor, writer, producer. Like there's so much, and director, of course, there's so much about her that is very talented and speaks well of her in the episode she's directed as well. They're interesting episodes in those particular series. So for me, this makes me want to go. I probably wouldn't have gone if it was Franco directing. Now that she's directing, I'm 1,000% on board to see what she does with this story.
I'm not going to go to say I don't want to take anything away from anything that Franco's directed in the past that I like, because I think we're having this situation for different reasons right now. But she most certainly, I mean, I haven't seen Lemon. I've seen some of the episodes of television she's directed though, and she seems like, I mean, I'll go for it and say up and coming talent, someone to keep your eye on. And based on everything I've heard about Lemon, and now the fact that she's attached to this project, I do really want to see it. And the way you describe Lemon starts to put the potential tone and style of this movie into perspective, because I had read the Twitter feed when that first happened, but I first read, what was it, the Rolling Stone article that this movie is supposed to be based on. And when I read the Twitter feed, I'm going Spring Breakers territory. I'm picturing, big bold colors, all this crazy outlandish stuff. But then when I was reading the Rolling Stone article, which is based more so on actual interviews with the people involved, and the Rolling Stone article also gets into the serious problem of sex trafficking.
Right.
So I am wondering which direction this movie is going to veer towards. And based on how you described it, I get the feeling like it might be a little mix of both. Like you might be able to go on this wild ride, but without it ever taking away from the fact that this is a serious, terrible problem. So I'm kind of hoping that that's the path they wind up taking with this project.
Yeah, the original article, as Perri mentioned, was in Rolling Stone, written by David Kushner, and it was called "Zola Tells All the Real Story Behind the Greatest Stripper Saga Ever Tweeted." So this is definitely going to have some sort of sense of humor, and I'm excited to see what Bravo can do with this, because if you do a movie like this, you may just want to make smaller independent features for the rest of your career. If that's where your heart is, have at it. But we've also seen directors who make smaller movies that have tinges of comedy, that are good at storytelling, that can elevate you to the stratosphere. If you want to do a giant comic book movie, if you want to do an outer space of it, you want to do whatever you want to do, movies like this can help lay the bedrock for that. So excited to see what Bravo does with Zola and then where her career goes from there. We're going to save some time for your live Twitter questions at the end of this show. So go ahead and start tweeting right now at Collider Video, and use the hashtag Collider Movie Talk. As you saw at the top of the show, we had our little graphic about Las Vegas. It's amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con, and we are going to be there in full force. Collider is the official media partner of the event, meaning we have a lot of cool panels. We're going to have some celebrity interviews, full coverage of the event, start to finish. I'm going to be on a few panels myself. Perri Nemiroff, you are going to be there as well. John Rocha, you are going to be 200 miles away.
I will be. I'll be holding down the fort here. Yeah.
You can come hang. We can get a cot for my room.
I might drive up there for the weekend and watch you guys on your panels and cheer.
You should.
Perri 316 or Ellis 316.
I believe what's happening is there's a van situation. I think we were originally going to fly, and then I think that we decided to get a van, and then everybody's going to be riding in a van, which you know what that means. I am going to be flying to Las Vegas. Probably going to go in Thursday night. I might pop in to do some shows at Harrah's that weekend, but it's going to be a whole lot of fun. It's at the convention center. So for more information, just go to collider.com. We also have a podcast feed. You might be listening to it right now. It's the Movie Talk podcast channel. Check out it's a channel to feed, whatever the hell it is. It's Movie Talk. You can get every day of the week. And then you can also check out Perri's show Mailbag on the weekends, as well as Afterthoughts, hosted by Ryan and Jay. Perri, what was the most controversial topic of Mailbag this past weekend?
I'm pretty sure the most controversial topic was when I looked over at Riley on Sunday's episode and I saw his chewed ball of gum sitting on his phone for later. It was just like absolute breakdown after I noticed that. And then I had flashbacks to Schnepp saving his lollipop on his Chromebook during a Nightmares episode.
The lollipop's a lot worse. Just as somebody who saves gum from time to time, the lollipop, I've gotten addicted to peppermint water. You can get a creation. It's like peppermint flavored water. So now if I'm chewing a piece of peppermint gum, I might spit it into my water cup. Pepperminty fresh. Nice. We have an all-new episode of Lollipop Leaving John Schnepp with Collider Heroes is going to be up later on today. And check out Collider Games. It's our new channel on YouTube. Subscribe to Collider Games and check out all the latest coverage that we had the whole week long of E3. All right, we're going to move on to your live Twitter questions, and it kicks off with a good one, and also because it's sports-related. Cool. Sebastian Fila says, will the FIFA World Cup affect the box office this month, either domestic or worldwide? worldwide. Huge shout out to Mexico for taking down Germany. What an upset that was. And then Sweden tied Brazil. That's pretty crazy. So a lot of mayhem. I still have Belgium as winning the World Cup. Do you think that it could actually impact the box office?
I don't mean to correct you, but it was Switzerland tying Brazil.
Was it Sweden?
Yeah, Sweden played today.
One has chocolate, one is neutral.
Right, well.
Or maybe both are Switzerland.
Yeah, they're not so neutral.
Which is the clock? That's Switzerland too.
Yeah,
well
clock.
done, Switzerland.
Yeah, Switzerland's pretty cool. Here's the Swiss Miss. I like them, the hot chocolate. So
Peppermint water.
Here's what I'll say. Well, a lot of films in England were pushed back because of the World Cup because they didn't want the box office to be affected. The estimated 23 million people are going to be watching the England game today at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time in England. So that will affect going to the theater. People love soccer all over the world, football all over the world. So I don't know domestically how much it'll affect, to be honest with you, because $180 million certainly didn't affect the box office this weekend. So I can't imagine going forward it'll affect it because the games get less and less after this week. And so we'll see, or after this week and next week. So we'll see how it affects it domestically. Internationally, certainly will affect it. Okay, in fact, they're showing games in theaters, and those are theaters that you could have screenings of films at that people go to pay to see. So it's a different situation overseas than it is here.
Yeah, I think also it's February when the Super Bowl happens now, and so studios still tend to avoid having a lot of major releases in February, but I think that is kind of known as the black hole domestically, that Super Bowl weekend, because they know that nobody's going to the movies on Sunday, or at least, a fair amount of people are going to the movies because they're all going to watch the big game. Worldwide, though, the World Cup is far and away the biggest sporting event. I don't know if what the ratings say versus the Olympics, but I would certainly say that the World Cup would put a bigger dent in the box office than the Olympics would.
You guys said it, and Rocha pointed out the obvious. This is definitely going to make a dent in the box office because we just had a studio move around one of their biggest wide releases to accommodate it. And, when it comes to domestic versus international and World Cup versus, let's say, Super Bowl, it's all about just gauging how big of a dent that's going to wind up being. So domestically, I think it will make a dent because I still think there's a lot of people in the States that are watching the World Cup, but it will be significantly smaller.
Yeah, I just don't think Jurassic Park, I don't think Fallen Kingdom is like, oh, damn it, we forgot about the World Cup.
Right.
Like, I think they're going to be fine. I don't think that it's going to, because it's a soccer match and then you can go see a movie. You want to watch a particular match, you want to see one country or another country, and then you can still go to the movie. Same thing with the Super Bowl weekend, but it just feels like the Super Bowl weekend, that entire day of Sunday just gets sucked up by Super Bowl parties, which I do not attend. I want to watch the game.
Also because the games on the West Coast start at 3 a.m., 5 a.m., 8 a.m., 11 a.m. So that doesn't affect right when the cycle starts of when films are showing. Sometimes most theaters start at 10:30, but then they have run to the rest of the day. But on the East Coast, could affect it.
It affects your sleep cycle, John. You
sure.
read Tom Brady's book? Are you getting your 9 hours a day?
I go to bed at 8 p.m. when the World Cup, whenever it's a 5 a.m. game I want to watch, like this morning, I go to bed at 8 p.m.
How many hours of sleep did you get last night?
5.
Okay, Perry?
I got a solid 8.
Okay. I got 7, and I'm disappointed about it. But don't worry, I have time for a nap later on
Sleep
today.
is important.
That's true.
All right, Robbie Haskell has one that is sure to have some heated opinions. And he says, how does a composer really affect a movie? Can you give it an example of a good composer making a film better and a composer making a film worse? Okay, so it's actually an interesting point you bring up, because I can give thousands of examples of a composer making a movie better. Is there a specific example you can think of with a composer making a movie worse?
Perry?
The only reason I'm saying this is because it's fresh in my mind, and it was something so specifically within, and I don't think the score for this movie overall is bad, but one specific moment didn't work for me, and it's the Enfys Nest theme in Solo: A Star Wars Story, which is in such stark contrast to everything else in that every single time it kicked in, which I think it might be twice, completely took me out. So that's probably my negative example.
There is a movie, I can't remember what the hell it was. It came out last year sometime, and I remember the score bugging me, but I can't remember what it was. Rocha, do you have any good examples?
Well, I know for Rogue One, the score bothered me, and Giacchino usually is a killer on a composer, but he only got like 3 or 4 weeks before the film came out to compose the music, and you could tell. You have to get past the score a little bit to enjoy the movie. I love Rogue One. It's probably my favorite one of the new ones that have come out. But the score was tough to get past the first time I watched it. And then eventually you just kind of get used to it. But another one is Meet Joe Black. That score killed that movie. That movie was an interesting exploration of death versus life and how you proceed through the world knowing death is imminent. And the score every time was so overdone. It just killed these really small, beautiful moments. And I was like, what are you doing? swing. And so definitely that a bad score. You know it instinctively when you hear it that it doesn't fit with the film. So, but it's rare. It's rare.
One of my biggest pet peeves that made me think of it is when the score foreshadows the emotional beat that's about to happen. So it tees you up for a certain thing, and then you're like, oh, well, now I know what's coming.
Right. Which is why Hans Zimmer's score is so fantastic. It's so damn subtle, and then when it hits the beats, you don't even realize that it's been going on for a minute. And that's what's so great about his score. It just goes underneath, and boom, these epic moments in Man of Steel are just fantastic.
Yeah, I don't want to crap further on Star Wars because you said the Solo movie, you said Rogue One. The prequels, I think, have some nice moments in them, and obviously you get more classic Star Wars music, which is my favorite film music of all time. But the Anakin and Padme theme, I just don't like it. I just do not like it. Every time if I'm at Disneyland and they're playing that in the Star Wars, I'm just like, I just skip to the next track. I just do not like it. I do like Duel of the Fates a lot. So what's your favorite example of a score elevating a movie?
Oh, I have one. I think that the movie Insidious would not be the same movie if it were not for that score. I really just adore that score to the point that when we were doing edits on Child Eater, that was our temp score. That was kind of guiding us as we stitched the movie together. It's some of the singers, they just come at just the right moments, and then you have this great background. And I think I think that's Joe Bashira, who works with James Wan a lot, and who actually is. I know he's the Conjuring Bathsheba, the witch in that, and I think he's also the red-faced demon in Insidious too. But his work is just absolutely astounding, and in Insidious 1 in particular, there is no doubt in my mind at all that it would have been a completely different movie with a different score.
I think mine is John Williams in Jaws. When the shark breaks down, and you can't shoot the scenes that you were supposed to shoot with the shark, you have to have music that conveys the shark before you ever see it. And the movement of the camera combined with that score makes you feel the terror and dread throughout the whole movie. And then when you get to them like having these amazing adventurous moments when they're going after the shark on the orca ship, the movie transforms into something else completely. And then occasionally that dread comes back. And so for me, that what John Williams did on Jaws is incredible. That film, there's no way that film is as terrifying without that score or as effective without that score.
Yeah, I would go back about a decade and a half further than Jaws and say Psycho, because when you see the shower scene, the way Hitchcock masterfully cut it together, it's very quick, it's very jumpy. The music really accentuates the action because it's hard to tell exactly. You know that somebody's getting stabbed, but it's like it's going back and forth and back and forth, and just hearing the violin, whatever the hell that, it just it really adds something to it. That's why I take baths. Gail McGowan says, has there been any more news about Denis Villeneuve's Dune? The latest news that I know of came out in, I believe, May, and that was that Denis had announced that he's working on Dune and he wants to split it into 2 movies. It's too big of a project to make 1 movie, so it's going to be 2 probably long movies. Does that get you guys excited about Dune? We don't know if Sting's coming back yet.
Sting is not coming back, for God's sake.
He might come back.
Stop it.
He might cameo.
Stop it.
I'm going to take a pass on this because I can't remember if the one thing I heard was not to be mentioned publicly or not.
I agree.
Did you do a set visit to Dune already?
No. That's definitely not the case. No, I'm going to... Yeah.
Both of us are privy to that information. I was going to say the same thing. I don't think we're allowed to say what we've heard, but the splitting of the 2 is interesting. I don't know.
Is Denis still doing it?
I love Denis. Every single movie he's released, I've absolutely loved.
You guys are talking around it now.
The splitting of the 2 worries me, concerns me.
It concerns me too.
Yeah, because if the box office isn't big like it wasn't for 2049 for the first installment, what are you going to do with that second?
Well, the box office was fine for 2049 if you didn't spend that much money to make it. But if you're splitting something into 2 movies, it's
box office wise, it's a dangerous game to play. But when I think about, that story is so dense. Maybe 2 films would serve the story well, but that's still, it doesn't change the scenario of, oh no, what if 1 doesn't make as much money as we thought? And then we have this whole other gigantic budgeted blockbuster to get out there.
All right, well, when the panelists know a lot more than the host about a particular story, that's when you end the show. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Clark Movie Talk. We'll be back here 9 a.m. PST tomorrow. I want to thank Perri Nemiroff and John Rocha. They need no introduction. They need no exit. They know a lot more about movies than me. Let's hear about that Dune story. See you tomorrow. Hey everybody, Mark Ellis here. Thanks for watching this episode of Collider Movie Talk. You want to watch more? Then click up here, or you can click right here for more great content from Collider. And if you haven't subscribed to Collider Video, do so right now and share this vid with your friends. Thanks for watching.